The waiter had a small black book in one hand and a polite smile that had begun to thin at the edges, the way smiles do when an evening has stopped behaving the way it was supposed to. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you. The party at table 14 mentioned you would be settling the check before they left. I just wanted to confirm before I close it out." I set down my coffee cup. I looked across the dining room toward table 14, which was empty now. 3 water glasses, one half full of melted ice. A bread basket pushed to the side. A folded linen napkin where my daughter Sabine had been sitting, and another where her husband Reagan had been sitting, and a third where my granddaughter Iris, 15 years old, headphones around her neck, eyes always on her mother, had been sitting until 20 minutes earlier. I had not been seated at table 14. I had been seated at table 6, by myself, reading a paperback I had brought from home because I was not sure how long the wait would be. When Sabine had texted me at 4:12 that afternoon and asked, "Mom, can you meet us at Callaway's at 6? Reagan got a promotion and we want to celebrate as a family," I had said yes. I had taken the bus. I had arrived at 5:58. The hostess had looked confused and said, "Whitlock, party of 3, already seated, ma'am." I had smiled. I had said, "I'm meeting them. I must be the 4th. The hostess had looked at her tablet. She had said, very politely, "I'm sorry, the reservation is for 3. Would you like to join their table or be seated separately?" I had stood in the lobby for a moment. Callaway's was a tasting menu restaurant with an 8-course prefix and a wine pairing that doubled the price. I had been there once, with my late husband Forrest, in 2011, on our 40th anniversary. The chairs were leather. The bread was warm. The waiters wore vests. The hostess, whose name tag said Denise, had looked at me with the expression a young woman wears when she is about to do an older woman, a kindness without making a show of it. "Ma'am, would you like a small table to wait at? I can let your family know you've arrived." "That would be lovely, Denise. Thank you." She had seated me at table 6, near the window, with a glass of water and a small candle. She had walked across the dining room toward table 14 and spoken quietly to my daughter. Sabine had looked over at me. She had waved. She had not stood up. She had not come over. That was at 6:03. I had read 3 chapters of my paperback. I had ordered a cup of soup off the bar menu. The soup had been $7. I had eaten it slowly, the way a woman eats when she is pretending not to be the only person in a room who is alone. At 7:40, the waiter from table 14 had crossed the room and stopped at table 6. He had said, smiling, "Mrs. Whitlock, your family asked me to bring you a small dessert from their table. They wanted you to have a treat." He had set down a slice of dark chocolate cake on a white plate. I had thanked him. I had eaten 3 bites. The cake had been delicious. At 8:26, I had looked up from my book and noticed table 14 was empty. At 8:31, the waiter had crossed the room with the polite, thinning smile and the small black book. Now, at 8:33, I was looking at him with my hands folded in my lap. "The waiter's name tag," said Marco. He had brown hair and tired eyes and the careful patience of a man who had worked Saturday nights for at least 10 years. "Marco, may I see the bill, please?" "Of course." He set the leather folder on my table. I opened it. The total was $3,418. The wine line read, Domaine Le Flaive Pouligny Montrachet, 1 heure. Cru, $2,018,680. The amuse-bouche line read, Caviar service, $240. The entree line read, Wagyu, a 5-tasting flight, 3 portions, $1,050. The dessert line read, Tasting menu finale, all selections, $260. The chocolate cake on my table was on the bill at $14. They had charged my dessert to their tab, generously, before they left. I closed the folder. I set my hands flat on top of it. I looked up at Marco. Marco. Could I trouble you for a fresh cup of coffee? Black. And could you ask Denise, the hostess, to come over for a moment when she has a chance? He blinked. Of course, ma'am. He left. I sat in the small pool of candlelight at table 6, and I let myself understand, fully, what had happened. Sabine and Reagan had taken my 15-year-old granddaughter to a tasting menu restaurant for a celebration dinner. I had not been invited to participate in. They had told the waiter I would pay. They had walked out. They had told the waiter to bring me a slice of cake, a small public gesture of, "Grandma is here. Grandma is part of the family," to make the abandonment look like an act of love. They had calculated that I would not make a scene. They had calculated that I would pay the $3,418 rather than embarrass myself in a restaurant where waiters wore vests. I did not cry. My hands didn't tremble. I had in my purse a checkbook that could cover the bill. I had also, in my purse, a phone with my realtor's number on it. I had, on a quiet morning 14 months earlier, after Forrest's funeral, made a single careful decision about my house. I had decided that the house Forrest and I had bought in 1973, the 4-bedroom colonial on Greer Street, with the dogwood tree he had planted, the summer Sabine was born, would be, willed to my daughter on my death, but would remain in my sole name during my lifetime. Forrest had insisted. He had said, in his hospital bed 3 weeks before he died, "Camille, hold the house. Hold it tight. The day you stop holding it is the day Sabine stops calling you on Sundays." I had laughed at him. I had told him he was a cynic. Forrest had said, very quietly, "I am not a cynic, Camille. I have been your husband for 47 years and Sabine's father for 43. I know exactly which one of you she calls when she needs something." I had held the house. I had not transferred it. I had updated the will. Only Sabine remained the beneficiary on my death, but the deed remained mine. The house was, by current market estimates, worth $1,240,000. I sat at table 6 with the leather folder under my hands, and I thought about the Wagyu tasting flight and the Pouligny Montrachet and the chocolate cake delivered as a costume of inclusion. And I thought about what Forrest would say if he were sitting across from me right now. Forrest would say, "Camille, list it." Marco returned with the coffee. Denise, the hostess, walked over a moment later. She had the careful eyes of a woman who had seen the situation unfold from across the room and had been waiting to see what kind of evening I was going to choose to have. "Mrs. Whitlock, Marco said you'd like to speak with me." "Denise, sit down for 1 minute if you can." She glanced at Marco. He nodded. She sat. "Denise, I am going to pay this bill in full. I want that to be clear. I am not going to dispute it. I am not going to cause any difficulty for you or for Marco. I will pay it tonight, and I will tip Marco generously because he is not the person who arranged this evening." "Ma'am, I am not finished. Before I do that, I would like to ask you one favor. Could you provide me with a printed copy of the reservation as it was made, including the time of the booking, the name on the reservation, and the credit card on file?" Denise hesitated, just briefly. "Mrs. Whitlock, the reservation was booked online by Sabine Whitlock Granger at 3:47 this afternoon for a party of 3. The credit card on file is," she touched her tablet, "it is your credit card." I let that sit for a moment. "Denise, yes, my credit card." "Yes, ma'am, the card on file matches your name." "Could I see the card number on the reservation?" She turned the tablet toward me. The last 4 digits were 7,042. That was Forrest's old American Express, a card that had been cancelled in 2022. A card that should not, by any reasonable interpretation of the world, still be active in any reservation system anywhere. But it had been entered today, by my daughter, to make the reservation she had not invited me to. Denise watched my face. "Ma'am, The card was declined when we ran it for pre-authorization at 6 p.m. Your daughter said you would settle in person. We took her at her word, because she said you were on your way. Yes. Mrs. Whitlock, I am very sorry. Denise, you have nothing to apologize for. You have done your job beautifully tonight. Please send a copy of the reservation details to my email. I will write it down for you. I wrote my email on a napkin. She took it. She squeezed my hand once before she stood up. I paid the bill with my own card. I tipped Marco $400. I left a $100 handwritten note for the kitchen, for the team that worked tonight. I walked out of Callaway's at 9:11, to the cool October air. I called my realtor from the curb. Her name was Genevieve Holst. She had sold 3 houses on my street. She picked up on the third ring, even though it was a Saturday night, because Genevieve and I had been friends since 1994. Camille, what's wrong? Genevieve, I'd like you to list the house. A pause. Camille, Greer Street. Yes. Your house. Yes. When? Now. This week. Tomorrow, if possible. Quiet listing. No yard sign. I want a CMA on my desk by Tuesday morning and a private showing scheduled for next Saturday. Can you do that? Camille, are you all right? Genevieve, I am perfectly all right. I will explain at lunch on Monday. For now, I just need you to do the thing. Camille, yes. Forrest told me, at his retirement party in 2009, that if you ever called me on a Saturday night and used the word list, I should not ask questions. I should just file. I closed my eyes. He told you that? He did, Camille. I have been waiting 15 years. Genevieve. Yes. File. Filing now. I hung up. I took the bus home. I sat by the window. I did not cry. The streetlights moved across my face, and I watched my own reflection in the dark glass, and I thought, Forrest, you were right about everything. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea in the mug Forrest had bought me in Edinburgh in 1991, and I let myself remember. Not everything. Just the parts I had been training myself not to look at directly for the last 14 months. The funeral, of course. Sabine had given the eulogy, 9 minutes long. She had thanked Reagan's parents for being a second set of parents to me when I needed them. Forrest had been in the ground for 42 minutes by the time she finished speaking. She had not mentioned my name once. The Christmas after, I had hosted. I had bought the goose. I had set the table for 9. Sabine had arrived 2 hours late with a tray of cookies from a bakery, and the announcement that they could not stay for dinner because Iris had a commitment. Iris had rolled her eyes and looked at me apologetically. They had been gone by 4:30. I had eaten the goose alone. The summer of last year, Iris had asked if she could come stay with me for a week, just to read books and sleep in the back bedroom and have your blueberry pancakes. Sabine had called me the next morning and cancelled. Mum, Iris doesn't really know what she wants. She has summer programs. We need her here. Iris had texted me that afternoon. Grandma, I'm sorry. I tried. The day in March, when Sabine had asked, on the phone, in the polite voice she used for things she had been planning for a while, Mom, have you thought about putting the house in my name? Just for estate planning. Reagan's accountant says it could save us a lot in taxes when you know eventually. I had said, I'll think about it, sweetheart. I had not thought about it. I had simply not raised the topic again. Sabine had not raised it again either, until the handoff had been quietly assumed by both of us. The way assumptions are quietly assumed, when one party is too polite to say no, and the other is too patient to say yes again. The dinner 6 weeks ago, when Reagan had said, casually, over wine, Camille, we should really get you set up with a financial advisor. Someone who can help you think about the future. I had laughed. I had said, I had a financial advisor. Reagan had said, oh? Who? I had said, his name is Marshall. Reagan had said, "Is he young? You want someone young these days, with the new tax laws." Marshall is 78 years old. He has been my advisor for 26 years. He had been Forrest's friend before he was my advisor. I had said, "Marshall is exactly the age I need him to be." Reagan had smiled the way men smile when they are filing away a future conversation. Tonight at Callaway's was that future conversation. I had simply attended it without realizing I had been put on the agenda. Genevieve called me on Sunday morning at 8:14. "Camille, I have the CMA. Your house in current condition will list at 1.28. I have 3 buyers in mind already. One is a cardiologist relocating from Boston. He paid cash for a house 2 streets over last spring. He has been asking me about Greer Street for 9 months. Do you want me to call him?" "Yes." "Private showing this Saturday?" "Yes." "Camille?" "Yes." "Have you told Sabine?" "Not yet." "Are you going to?" "Genevieve, I'm going to let her find out the way I found out about the bill last night, from a stranger, in a public place, after the fact." A small silence on the line. "Camille, I will say this once and then I will not say it again. I think Forrest is laughing somewhere. He always did appreciate good timing, Genevieve." We hung up. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen window. The dogwood Forrest had planted the summer Sabine was born was bare now. October had stripped it. The branches were bare and dark against the grey morning sky. I thought, I will miss this tree. Then I thought, no. I will plant another one, somewhere I can see it, in a place where the people who eat dinner with me are the people who eat dinner with me. Sabine did not call me on Sunday. She did not call me on Monday. She did not call me on Tuesday. On Wednesday morning at 10:47, she called me. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, listen, I am sorry I haven't called since Saturday. Reagan and I have been swamped. Listen, the credit card company called. They said someone tried to charge anyway. It must have been a hold or a system error or something. Could you give me a call when you have a chance? Love you." She had not yet realized that the bill had cleared. Callaway's had charged my actual card. The Forrest card had been declined at pre-authorization. Sabine still believed her trick had worked, that I had paid in some confused state and not noticed, or had not paid at all, and the restaurant had absorbed it. She was, in her way, asking for a status update on her own scam. I did not call her back. The private showing happened on Saturday. The cardiologist offered $1,290,000 on Sunday morning. Cash. 45-day close. He wanted the dogwood preserved. I said yes. I signed the offer at Genevieve's kitchen table at 11:32. On Sunday, October the 22nd, exactly 2 weeks after Callaway's. I did not tell Sabine. I did not need to. Marshall called me on Wednesday afternoon. He had heard from Genevieve, who had told him because she knew I would want him to know. "Camille." "Marshall, you sold the house." "I did." "Tell me what you want to do with the money." We talked for an hour. I had thought about it carefully on the drive home from Genevieve's the previous Sunday. Of the $1,290,000, after fees and Genevieve's commission, I would clear approximately $1,180,000. I wanted 3 things from it. The first was a small condo near my old neighborhood, the kind of place with a doorman and a balcony where a dogwood could be planted in a large pot. 2 bedrooms. Quiet building. Good son. I had been quietly looking. Genevieve had 3 to show me. The condo would cost approximately $520,000. The second was a trust for Iris, my granddaughter. $300,000, locked until she was 25, untouchable by her parents. Forrest's middle name as the trust title, the Bram Trust. So that one day Iris would ask why it was called that, and I could tell her about her grandfather. The third, was a charitable bequest of $360,000 to a small organization called the Older Diners Fund, a project that helped widowed and elderly people who had been abandoned with restaurant bills they could not afford. I had never heard of it before that week. Marshall had told me about it on Tuesday, in passing, as a story he had read in the newspaper. The fund had been started by a woman in Sacramento whose mother had been left at a Denny's with a $40 bill she could not pay. $40, 3,418. It is, I have realized, the same wound at a different scale. Marshall drafted the bequest. I signed it on Friday. By the close of business on Friday, October the 27th, I had a signed offer on the house at Greer Street, a pending purchase on a 2-bedroom condo with a balcony, a trust in Iris's name that her parents could not touch, a $360,000 bequest to the Older Diners Fund, a revised will that no longer made Sabine the residuary beneficiary of anything I owned. Sabine still believed her credit card trick had worked. She found out on Saturday. She found out because the for sale sold sign went up on Greer Street that afternoon. Genevieve had asked me whether I wanted a sign at all. I had said yes. Just for 2 days, Genevieve, so the neighbours stopped wondering. I was not living at Greer Street anymore. I had been at the condo since Wednesday. The new owners would close on November the 22nd. Sabine called me at 4:09 p.m. on Saturday. The sign had been up for 90 minutes. I picked up. "Hi, sweetheart." Mom, I just drove past the house. There's a sign. There's a sold sign. What is happening?" "I sold the house, sweetheart." "What do you mean you sold the house? When did you? How? When did this happen?" 2 weeks ago. I signed the offer the day after Iris's school's homecoming game. Closing is November 22nd. I have already moved into a condo. I will text you the address when I am ready for visitors. Mom, that house was supposed to. Mom, that house was going to come to me. It was, sweetheart, on my death. It is not coming to you now, because I have sold it during my lifetime. You can't, Mom. You cannot just... Sabine. What? 2 weeks ago, you and Reagan took Iris to a tasting menu at Callaway's. You used Dad's old expired credit card to make the reservation. You told the waiter I would settle the check. You sent me a piece of cake to my table, where you did not invite me to sit. You walked out at 8:26. The bill was $3,418. I paid it, with my real card, the one your father did not leave behind. The silence on the line was long. Mom. I didn't, Mom. That was a misunderstanding. The credit card was a mistake. The waiter was supposed to... Sabine. Stop. She stopped. I am not interested in the version of events you have prepared for this conversation. I am interested in telling you what is going to happen next, and I would like you to listen without arranging your face. Mom. You are still my daughter. I love you. Iris is still my granddaughter. I love her. The trust I have set up for her cannot be touched by you or by Reagan. It exists in her name alone. She will receive it at 25. Until then, she may visit me at the condo any Saturday she chooses, through the front door. Without asking permission, the doorman has been instructed. Mom. The proceeds from the house, after the condo and the trust, have been bequeathed to a charitable fund that pays the restaurant bills of older people who have been abandoned with checks they cannot afford. The fund is called the Older Diners Fund. I gave them $360,000. I want you to know that. I want you to remember it every time you take Iris to a restaurant for the rest of your life. She did not speak for a long time. Then, very quietly, Mom, I am so sorry. Sabine. Yes, I know. I let that sit. Sweetheart, here is the thing. Sorry is the easiest word in the English language. It is a word that takes 1 second to say. The hard word is, I will not do that again. And the harder word is, I will tell my husband I cannot do that again. And the hardest word is, I will tell my mother in advance the next time we plan a celebration. When you can say all three of those words to me, in that order, we will go to dinner together. I will pay, with my own card, and I will be seated at the table. She started to cry. Mom, yes, I love you. I love you too, Sabine. That is exactly why this is the conversation we are having. I hung up. That night I sat at the small table on my new balcony. The dogwood, a young one, in a large pot, that the cardiologist had let me dig up from the side yard at Greer Street as part of the sale agreement, sat next to my chair. Its branches were bare. It had survived the move. It would bloom again in April. I wrote one line in the small notebook I had started keeping the morning after Callaway's. They told the waiter I would cover dinner. So I told the broker to list the house, and I covered every old woman in this state who has ever sat alone at table 6 with a cup of soup and a paperback. Then I closed the notebook, and I drank my tea, and I slept the way a woman sleeps when she has finally stopped paying for tables that did not save her a chair, and started building a balcony with one chair on it that will always be hers.